Hi, Module 2 discussion group. I wanted to start off our discussion today by helping to put things in perspective by sharing with you my focus, my population group for our today's college student project. My population group is underprepared students. I also thought it would help to share that I work at a community college with an open door policy. So at my institution we work with a great number of underprepared students. So hopefully that'll help put a little bit of perspective to the answers for this week's discussion and help you to see things from my point of view and why I might have selected the key issues that I did for this particular discussion. So let's jump right into the key issues, and the first key issue that I chose was from Chapter 4 of College Students in the United States, Characteristics, Experiences, and Outcomes by Wren and Reason. And this issue explores a student being underprepared for their transition to college. So this Chapter 4, Transition to College, explored first-year experience and transition students such as transfer students. And this was especially relevant because it starts from a point of everyone is admitted. And that is exactly where community colleges start from with our open door policies. So the chapter immediately starts by addressing both academic and social transitions from high school to college on page 64, and this is often where students can start to fall through the cracks. While defining socialization, Wren and Reason discuss the important role of support networks on page 65 in our text. These are so often missing in the underprepared students' lives. Several of the examples cited in our text of where students connect with these networks would be places like residence halls and student involvement fairs. And these are not typically available to people like commuters, students like commuters, non-traditional students, working students, and also a lot of times underprepared students don't realize the importance and value that they should place on investing in these support networks, and they're oftentimes also not comfortable doing so on their own. So they need a lot of support and help in connecting with and valuing these support networks. As the chapter progressed into transition issues, the scope became narrower with a definition that eliminated non-traditional students. And there was still plenty of really great material that focused on interventions used with students that were underprepared for college. But for the sake of time, I'm going to jump right on over to my key issue number 2, which came from our second text for our class, How College Affects Students by Pasquarelli and Terenzini. And this issue focused more on the academic side of things, where students are underprepared on that side of the house. And sections of chapters 3 and 4 in particular stood out for me. So starting with chapter 3, at the very beginning of the chapter on page 66, the authors acknowledge the numerous influences that impact grades. And this stood out to me because of the importance and relevance that we put on grades and determining whether or not underprepared students get to persist in school. You know, typically if they don't do well and they don't have sufficient grades, they're not allowed to continue in college. So when we think of the influences on grades and how non-standardized grading is, but how impactful those grades are to the students, that can really cause us to pause for a moment and maybe perhaps think about that. They also tell us that how well graduates can function with a given subject matter is more important than their academic growth while in college. They mention this twice on page 70 and 145. And they also mention that it's very hard to determine if the skills learned, again, in that same academic area that they just mentioned in this previous statement that I mentioned. It's hard to determine if they are learned during college or because of college. So that really stood out to me as well. And one of the reasons that did, because if it is because of college, that the sheer act of being in college is what's making us have gains And then it's really important to start to think about those underprepared students, and as we help them with our transition to college, and at what point do we say you are no longer allowed to persist here at school, and especially if we know that the growth may be occurring just by the sheer act of being in college. So that kind of helps me transition over to chapter 4 within the same text. And the authors then start to begin to look at the skills and outcomes of college, not directly tied to a particular curriculum, but instead more general cognitive skills. And on page 155, they start to look at skills throughout the chapter, such as oral and written communication skills, critical thinking skills, analytical skills, reasoning skills, reflective thinking, and the like. They're the essence of the foundation of college preparedness. I think everybody would agree. They're often included in college orientation, freshman seminar courses, and often they're even the cornerstones of many colleges' QEPs. There's a little question regarding their value and worth as far as college preparedness is concerned. The authors found that not all college graduates are proficient critical thinkers. They mentioned that on page 205, and they also found that the gains made in reflective thinking during the college years may be due to the college experience itself and age on page 206. So again, this leads one to question and examine the treatment and handling of underprepared students. If exposure alone is shown to produce some gains, should it be taken into greater consideration when planning for the intervention for struggling underprepared students? And when we're quick to judge the underprepared student at not being great at critical thinking, and we see results that show that a good number of college graduates are not found to be good critical thinkers, are we too harshly judging some of our underprepared students? So these were just some of the two key issues, the top two that stood out to me from this module's reading. And in how these will impact my TCSCS project will be through the interviews. I now plan to address these transitions in greater detail in the flexible questions in our interviews. I'm particularly interested in the socialization or support networks and the cognitive skills that facilitate transitions. Thanks for watching my video. I look forward to watching all of yours, and I especially look forward to joining you face-to-face at our next class instead of being a WebEx student, so I very much look forward to meeting you then. Thank you so much. Until then.